Willis, you've got to be crazy. If Dad knew you had a gun, he'd shoot you.
He's not gonna know. But I gotta protect myself. I mean, this maniac might try to break in here.
What you talking about, Willis?
I just wanted to let you know about my study group.
Oh, don't be a fuddy-duddy. I'll be your study buddy.
I'm about to embark on one of the great challenges of my scientific career.
This work right here is gonna change history.
I think this is going to be our greatest mission.
I don't have time to study. I'll never get into Stanford.
I got big plans for you tonight. I got maps, I got charts. I'm going to see you through this because my credibility is on the line.
It's at this point that you'll want to start taking notes.
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we contemplate the TV shows we grew up with and search for the truth and wisdom within the tropes and cliches. And Amy, what's the trope we're talking about today?
Bang, bang, Jay, we're talking about guns.
Getting a gun, possibly being done in by a gun. We are dealing with very special episodes concerning shall we say, firearm safety in the 80s and 90s.
Question mark, safety?
Yeah, these are all shows in which somebody decides in a sitcom that maybe they should acquire an old pistol rifle. An old...
Nobody's getting a rifle, let's be clear. All of our people are getting handguns.
What were our shows?
We've got several instances where they call these handguns fun little names. So we watched Diff'rent Strokes, Season 5, Episode 5, The Peacemaker. If you're looking for it on streaming, it might be listed as Episode 6, but just look for the title, The Peacemaker. Head of the Class, Season 5, Episodes 8 and 9, Dead Men Don't Wear Pocket Protectors. Blossom, Season 4, Episode 9, 38 Special. And The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Season 5, Episode 15, Bullets Over Bel-Air.
Yeah, so these are all 80s and 90s shows. They're all exactly from our childhood. They're all in one way or another about young people sort of coming face to face with the grim realities of firearms in our modern world. Was this a thing for you? Did you ever have gun safety education as a kid? Were you ever exposed to guns? Was this at all an issue in your life?
No. So my family was very opposed to guns. We were one of those families who my mom didn't even want my little brother to have a squirt gun. And my granddad bought him a super soaker for his birthday one year. And so that was like this big thing because my mom had been like, no guns, not even squirt guns. So yeah, this was not something that I dealt with as a child other than that, we talked about stuff. And so my parents would explain why they didn't, think having a gun in the house was a good idea. Episodes like the ones we watched definitely started conversations, which is what they were meant to do. But I was surprised that none of our episodes did the very special episode thing where they sat down before or after and fully just addressed the audience.
That is true. We didn't have any of that.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's because it's such a touchy subject. There's no messaging being like, hey, don't do drugs, right? Because of this being, and then they'll talk about it in some of the episodes, the constitutional right, to keep and bear arms. And I think that, that puts this in a much more tricky situation because back in the 80s and 90s, the NRA would actively try to get your show canceled, just like they would do now.
Yeah. Here's my feeling on that. I'm going to sort of disagree, even though that definitely could very well be the reason. But my feeling watching these shows was that this was actually less of a hot button issue at the time, less politicized. And maybe
definitely.
The reason why they didn't necessarily feel the need to sit down the cast and have this really be on that top level of special episodes is that even though we are dealing with deadly real life stuff, at this time, these episodes play more akin to like Don't Play with Matches.
Yes.
It seems very much more about guns as a straightforward safety issue, and not, even though we do indeed get some of the constitutional debate and stuff like that in some of these shows, it seems to me like what we were looking at watching these shows that are pretty much all pre-Columbine, basically, when the idea of a school shooting, the idea of a mass shooting, as we've come to understand it, didn't exist.
Yeah, our latest show is 1995, and Columbine was
well before,
98 or 99.
99. And so, the two sort of buckets that the feelings in these shows seem to come from for me are, one, just like the safety of having a gun around the home,
right,
and what can happen if that is the case. And the most prominent example for me of that on television is not a sitcom. It is the episode of Beverly Hills 90210 from the second season, where poor Scotty, right, one of the
red shirts,
one of the original main cast members of Beverly Hills 90210, when it was originally conceived to be a show mostly about the cool, popular kids. And then there'd be these two sort of dorky kids that would be kind of like the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, that would sort of give us the point of view of like the plebeians, you know, who weren't on the social A-list. After about a year of that, they decided, no, let's have Brian Austin Green start dating Tori Spelling and make him cool.
Yeah,
just turn him into the
yeah,
cool kids.
Exactly.
And he'll be absorbed into them. And then the remaining dorky kid, will have him have a birthday party episode where his mom guilts David Silver, played by Brian Austin Green, to get all the cool kids to come to his birthday party, even though they don't like him. And then when his dad sends him into his office to get the candles to light the birthday cake, he discovers a handgun in his dad's desk drawer. When David Silver walks in to say, you know, come light the birthday candles, he says, "Look at how I can twirl the gun around like a cowboy," and shoots himself to death.
Yes, boom, and gone. And, you know, again, though, I think it's really interesting that that with these sitcoms, they are not, for the most part, really diving into that idea of like what you do when you find a gun in your home. Hey, parents, make sure you lock it up. Like that is not something that's discussed kind of at all. And it's interesting because that's what I do remember. I don't know, maybe I'm remembering that from later shows. I think there was a Boy Meets World episode where they had, you know, that kind of conversation, but I was not a huge Boy Meets World watcher, so I don't know where this idea of like it's important to know what to do when you find a gun like yes, as like sort of baseline safety skills.
Do not do this thing. Yeah, and it almost seems like, yeah, that message tended to be geared toward the parents, like make sure the guns are locked up, because the kids were just so stupid in this world. And obviously these events really happened, but I guess the real accidents are just sort of more mundane. And so they have to dream up these scenes of like, look at me. And that scene of seeing the blonde, floppy-haired, dorky kid from 90210 twirling the gun like RoboCop, and then cutting to Brian Austin Green going, no, and just going to the slow motion. They never showed you what happened. Like, it was just such nonsense, like just TV nonsense of like, they didn't film it. They had no sense of anything, but I always remembered that. And that to me typifies that first bucket of, yeah, just this is a household safety issue. Make sure that you are aware of how dangerous guns can be. And then the second bucket is this sort of like moral panic, the streets are unlivable, urban rot kind of thing.
Right.
Like you see in the Fresh Prince episode, in the Head of the Class episode, where we get the point of view of Billy Connolly, the Scotsman, right, who comes in and, oh, America's crazy, they've all got too many guns. You know, like, it's that thing that was...
Nice brogue, honey.
Even though it was before the mass shootings and the sort of horrors that we have now, we did have this issue of like the teenagers are hunter predators and the streets are just crawling with, you know, psychos that'll just stick you up and kill you, you know. And that's why we've got Carlton going like, Dad, don't tell me any fairy tales about the law.
Everything you've told me about justice is a lie.
Yeah, and so that's what's sort of brewing underneath these episodes. But it's striking to me how relatively innocent we were, how things were indeed going to get so much worse. I think at the time of these shows, there was more of an attitude of like, look, some people have guns in the house just the same way people have matches and cigarettes and whatnot. And so that's what these shows are trying to do, whether it's filling the void from school or family or whatever. These shows, especially, again, things like that 90210 thing where it's just like, hey, you know, you might send your kid into your office to get matches and next thing you know, he shot himself, you know, like just trying to make sure everyone's aware of how serious it is before it became so politicized and people started going like, let's just make them illegal or let's just make everybody have them. You know, like it was just more of like that. Let's teach the kids. Let's make sure everybody knows the basic safety.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it. Let's start with Diff'rent Strokes. And this begins with the maid saying on the phone, yes, I'm listening, but you're not saying very much. And I wrote that down as like, is this like the hallmark of a very special episode that they hired like Tom Stoppard to come in and like make sure that the first line had some, metaphorical weight or something. But
that all turns out to be a setup for an interesting take on the way that they get into the gun, introducing the gun in this episode. So they set up the dad as being this sort of negotiator.
Mediator.
Like mediator between his housekeeper and the company that's trying to, rip her off and charge her for something that didn't work. And she wants to return it and get a replacement. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's fine, but you still have to pay for it. And so he comes in, gets on the phone, and, he's the cool, calm head. And both Arnold and Willis are like, wow, Dad, that was really impressive.
The maid doesn't necessarily seem to notice that he tacitly threatens small claims court on to this customer service person or whoever he's talking to, and that's part of how he gets away. He's got like he knows what he's doing. He's got like a firm but tender hand, and so he tells the boys like, look, that's what it's all about. Like you've got to diffuse conflict whenever you can. And so now I'm heading up to the union negotiations. I've been chosen as like union representative or whatever.
Well, he's the liaison. His company is some sort of consulting company. And so he is going to either he's negotiating with the union of the people that work for his company, or he is going in as an outside like third party. It's not made clear. But either way, he would be on the, administration, like boss side, not the worker side. But he goes in and does mediate in these circumstances. And he gives Willis one key piece of advice is that you always just you want to start the meeting off with them agreeing to something. And it can be as simple as nice weather we're having today, isn't it? And then you get both sides to agree and you start from there.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I'm also noticing, I think, more than I did in the past, that Mr. Drummond, he rattles off a lot of burns. He's got a lot of and he's got a similar deal to Grandpa in Charles in Charge, the way he would always deliver one of his buddy burns and then immediately leave. He would be like, what was his name? Lembeck, you're as dumb as an ox. And then go then where's my blunderbuss? And storm off. And yeah, Mr. Drummond just always, a lot of them are too, they're to the kids in general. It tends to be the kids or the maid say something silly and Mr. Drummond cuts him down with a burn. And so the maid at one point, she's made tiny pancakes.
Yes, she didn't have enough batter. The kids ate all the pancakes. They were so excited. They're their favorites. And so they went over and got all the pancakes. And then after Mr. Drummond got off the phone, there weren't any pancakes left. And she goes, "Oh, I'll make you some more. Thank you so much for what you did." And then she comes back out and she's made 3 or 4 little, silver dollar size pancakes. Yeah. And she calls them that. And he was like, "It's more like 2 dimes and a nickel to me."
Yeah. He says 2 dimes and a nickel to me. And then he immediately will go "Now where's my papers?" or something. And just he'll have that burn and then immediately some little business that he
softens
transitions
the blow.
to.
Just insults as usual. Nothing.
Yeah, but I'm noticing he's knocking him off more than anybody. He's just a
you got to be quick
machine.
with that group, right? Because you've got Arnold acting, silly and pulling faces. So
what this all is going to revolve around is this ne'er-do-well in their school.
Well, a couple of them. It's rival gangs.
Yeah, well, but it all starts with this guy that Kimberly, the sister, she's dealing with him in some way. Do you remember she's buying something off of him?
Yeah, he pulls her aside in the hallway and is like, "Hey, I've got some, those are cute earrings or whatever. Let me show you some cool stuff." And he opens his locker, and his locker is the inside of some guy's coat that you would see in New York City.
Just general scumbag.
Full of jewelry. But this is Ari Gross, who you've seen on, he's one of these people that his IMDb is 1 episode of every show you've ever heard of.
Yes, he was a regular on Ellen.
Yeah, he is one of Ellen's friends, Adam or Alan, something
Adam,
like that.
I think was his character's name. And then he was also, you look at his thing, it's 1 episode on this, on that. I think of him as kind of a less handsome Ed, Fight Club guy, Edward Norton.
Yeah, he kind of does look like him. That's not wrong.
And yeah, he's just a dude. He's a working actor for our whole lifetimes. And
apparently this was his first credit. I mean, it is his first credit on IMDb. I mean, I don't know if that means it was his first actual thing ever, but it is his earliest credit. We also, so that's the first ne'er-do-well, but then we get these 2 rival gangs that are arguing over a locker that just happens to be next to Willis's, and Willis decides to step into this dispute between 2 gangs to do exactly what his dad has been doing.
Yes, Willis just decides, I'm all in on this mediating thing.
Right.
I am going to completely unnecessarily thrust myself into this conflict. Now, this is where I think the whole idea of urban violence, gang warfare, whatever, I'm pretty sure these writers, all of their knowledge comes from musicals, because this is basically the T-Birds from Grease versus the Outsiders from the Outsiders, which granted was not a musical until much later. But
that's fine. I was kind of thinking it was very Warriors, with the way that each of the gangs had their own kind of look.
Well, that is true, because I also would note that one of the T-Birds greaser gang has a member that's a white guy with curly hair and rainbow suspenders that does
a la
look
Horshack.
Or I would say Godspell. He looks like Victor Garber in Godspell.
I wonder if they were just let them loose in the costume closet and they were put whatever together that you want.
And I honestly think that the concept of greasers, the concept of street gangs things had just like, it had festered in the pop culture to like a parody of a parody of a parody.
Right.
I think you had, American American Graffiti and then Happy Days, and other stuff like that, which was genuinely like set in the 50s. You had, like everything that Stephen King was writing in the 80s and 90s was hung up on greasers. They're the bad guys in It, and sometimes they come back, and half a dozen other things. And so then you started...
His bullies from high school.
Yeah, exactly. But then you started getting stuff like this, where it doesn't even have anything to do with the 50s, but it's like, well, people still wear leather jackets. People still have blue jeans. Let's just hang on to that same vibe.
Well, and it was particularly one guy who had these like insane sideburns. And I said to Jay, I was like, while we were watching it, I was like, that guy's doing like an Andrew Dice Clay impression.
Yes.
Guess who it was?
It's not Andrew Dice Clay, was it?
It is Andrew Dice Clay in his very first appearance.
Yes.
He is so young in this,
Yes.
I didn't recognize him.
I recognized him, but I thought he was too young, and I would not have thought... I guess I don't know as much as I thought about the career of Andrew Dice Clay. I would not have thought that something like this would be like where he started. I mean, I wrote...
First screen appearance ever. And then, according to IMDb, 2 or 3 days later, he was also on a MASH episode.
Wow. Okay. But was he...
What a week.
Was he a working stand-up at this point?
Yes.
Okay, because yes, this guy very much gives Andrew Dice Clay energy.
He's going like, hey, yo, and like popping his collar and doing the whole
he looks
thing.
exactly like him. I honestly just thought, oh, this is a teenage version of that. I didn't realize that there was a teenage Andrew Dice Clay that was available to us.
Well, and that's the other thing is that none of the 6 gang members, they're like 3 in one gang and 3 in the other, none of them look as young as Willis, who himself was like in his 20s at this point. They all are like 30-year-old men playing high school
Mr.
kids.
Horshaw or Mr. Cotter type kids. They're having this face-off. It's all over a locker. Andrew Dice Clay is giving a real like edgy psycho performance.
Yeah,
where
he's like Crazy
hey,
Larry.
This is, and he'll give little slaps and clicks and stuff. It's my locker, man. Like he's really intense. And the other gang, like you mentioned, the Pony Boy gang is like they're more like just sort of dingy, like they don't have as much like flair with the way they're presented. But Willis thrusts himself in the middle of this. He says, let's talk about the weather. It's a shame we're having so much rain. And the guy goes, well, what's your solution, Mary Poppins?
Yeah, there's no agreement on the weather, and that immediately trips Willis up because he was like, I've got this ace in the hole. You get him to agree to something, and they're just like, what are you talking about the weather? What are you, a meteorologist? Get out of here, And he's like, And so then they start pressuring him, and they're like, all right, well, so you think you can fix this? You think you can solve it? Then it's going to be on you. It's on you now. We'll give you the key. And Willis is like, yeah, just give me some time. I'll come up with a solution for you, which is never what you're supposed to do as a mediator. It's not on you to come up with the idea. You're just there to help them come up with the idea that they can both agree on. But, one of many mistakes Willis makes with his, I'm going to step one foot into the mediator world. And so they give him the key for safekeeping, and he says he'll come back tomorrow.
Immediate cut. No establishing shot. No, the next day.
Yes.
It's just like this episode must have been running long. So they're like, all right. What's their last name? Arnold. No, what's their last name? Drummond. All right, Drummond, you got until tomorrow. All right, Drummond, what do you got for us? Just like immediate fade to the next day.
Yeah. And that's when it was discovered that whatever was in the locker has now been taken.
Yeah, stolen. Their locker is empty. The bad guy, again, these tense, he's doing finger work. He's like, the way if you cast cast 38-year-old Nicolas Cage to be like the drug kingpin in your crime movie or something. That is like the energy of this guy, just like surrounding Willis's head with his fingers going, when I settle a score, it stays settled.
Yeah, and so then we get the reappearance of Marco, Ari Gross, the other ne'er-do-well who had all of the stolen goods in his locker earlier.
So just to compare, this guy is more of like a deadbeat slacker ne'er-do-well.
He's a con man.
Versus the menacing street gang ne'er-do-wells.
Yeah. So he's like, hey, I see you got a problem with some gang guys. Crazy Larry is known to carry a weapon, so you better be careful. I have something over here in my locker you may want to check out for your own protection.
Yeah, this is going to be a running subtrope we should start tracking. He says the gun is going to cost him $85, but then he settles on $20.
Right.
Which even for 1985 or whenever this is,
82.
Yeah, this guy is going to hustle a lot to get, he's getting $20 for a gun.
Yeah, I mean, I chalked that up when it happened across multiple episodes to the guns that were being resold. Just kind of the person who had them didn't want to have them anymore, wanted to get it off their hands because it was a stolen weapon.
And in one case, they say that it was defective. But Willis buys the gun for $20. He hides it behind his yellow folder, right? That's in his hand.
Yeah, in his hands. He tucks it into his waistband and holds a folder over it.
Yeah. Now, one thing, for better or worse, about this family, Willis does not even consider keeping this a secret from Arnold. I would think maybe, I don't know, if I'm Willis in this situation, maybe I don't show the gun to my, 12-year-old brother, whatever. But he shares this right away.
I'm on the other end of this. I would be like, hey, this is in our room, because they share a room. I want you to know it's here. You are not to touch it. It is for safety. And I am hiding it, and do not mess with it. You know what I mean? Just sort of kind of laying down the law. But whatever the reason, Willis does immediately share. And then we get to the part of the episode that gives me starts to raise my blood pressure, because they're going to sleep. The boys are going to sleep after Willis has explained to Arnold that this crazy Larry is after him.
Yeah, Arnold gets a lot of he is the voice of reason in this scenario. Yeah. He's just we should not have this. This is crazy. Tell Dad about it. Take it back where you found it, whatever. He says, I'm going to sleep in the washing machine tonight, when he finds out that crazy Larry might be out for revenge.
Exactly.
But they think that they've got the house to themselves, or at least maybe the sister.
Yeah, she's there. Kimberly's there, but the dad is out of town. Remember, he's told us at the beginning that he's going to, he's going upstate or whatever to have this big negotiation with the union. And so they start hearing noises in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Oh, and Arnold wanted to go with Pearl, the landlord.
Yes, or the
maid,
the housekeeper.
Rather. She goes, I'm going to my mother's house. It's in Hoboken. And Arnold goes, but that's my favorite kind of mother of pearl.
Yes. And then he was like, it's okay. I speak the language of Hoboken. They're hearing noises. They're getting scared. And Willis picks up the gun and goes to see what's going on. Now, we know that Dad has come home and is in his office.
Shots of Mr. Drummond just quietly, let me check the mail. Let me go and adjust this little picture for him.
He's in his den, which is his office. And so he's in there, and he's, just getting home from a work trip, putting away things, getting things organized, looking at the mail. And, we get a great scene of Willis and Arnold sneaking down the stairs, trying to be quiet to, surprise this intruder.
Willis is wielding the gun. Arnold has a baseball bat.
That's right. And Willis is like, go back to the room. And he's like, I'm not staying in there by myself. That's every horror movie. No.
Yeah. And then there is a point pretty wild where they see that there is indeed a shadowy figure in their house. It's Mr. Drummond, but they can't tell that. And so there is a point where Willis raises the gun and sort of solemnly takes aim.
Is about to fire. Yeah.
Yes. Like, does not do the thing of like, hey man, I have a gun. Why don't you get out of here or I'll shoot you. He's just like, nope, I got to get him while the getting's good.
Well, and I would say every military personnel will tell you that you do not give away your position. So
yeah. So that is his plan. He's like, all right, the time has come for me to take this man's life. He has broken into our home. And that is when Kimberly, the sister, turns on the lights. Everybody's like, whoa, hey, ho, who are you? And it all
what does Drummond say? I came like 2 seconds away from losing my life or something like that. It was very, very close. And they had already gone in and checked to see if Kimberly was in her bed to make sure it wasn't her moving around in the house.
Yeah.
Thank goodness she woke up and came and turned on the lights. Like, this is my worst nightmare. This was the thing that I was always so terrified about when I lived in a house that had guns in it, because I was like, am I going to get shot when I go to the, to the kitchen to have a midnight snack? I'd be like, Ryan, I'm going to the kitchen. Don't shoot me.
Yeah. And so, the whole thing is out in the open. Willis is like, well, look, I got this gun because the local toughs at school think that I stole stuff from their locker. And so now this is my life now. I'm a wanted man. I got to have this gun. And then Mr. Drummond does not fuck around. He reports to school the next day and goes right up to this guy, Larry, Andrew Dice Clay. I love Mr. Drummond's attitude. That old New Yorker thing of like, what's the worst they can do to me? This is my Aunt Diane when they threaten her with eviction. I'd like to see him try.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit. And so, Mr. Willis points out Larry, the psycho greaser, to Mr. Drummond, and he goes, what's he going to do? Stab me with his sideburns? Again,
which is great because the sideburns were enormous.
Yes, classic Mr. Drummond burn. And he goes right over there and he says, I'm Willis's father and I'm damn mad, right?
Yeah.
And he's just like he just has this attitude like, what are you going to do?
Right.
But he's also like just trying to talk reason to them. And at one point he's like, poor Willis, he had to get a gun because of you.
Yeah.
And Larry's like, well, what do you mean gun? I don't know, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, this gun. And he shows him.
And Larry's like, that's my gun. I knew you stole it.
Yeah. And so that becomes proof positive that indeed it is Marco, the ne'er-do-well from across the hall, that has burglarized the locker.
The disputed locker.
Yeah, exactly. The locker that may or may not have belonged to the greasers or the outside.
And then the greasers are saying to Larry, what do you mean you had a gun in there, man? You know we're not about guns. Like, we're about cracking skulls. Yeah. And he's like, sometimes you just gotta, keep it for protection.
It is very much like the Saved by the Bell moment where Scud, the burnout, goes like, hey, I'm dumb, but I'm not that dumb.
Exactly.
We all need to have like a unified front. Every character, wherever they stand in the rungs of society, needs to be against this.
That's right. I'm going to crack his skull with a lead pipe, but I'm not going to have a gun.
Yeah. And so the gun, I guess, is returned to its rightful owner? Or I don't know.
It is taken to the principal because they're not allowed to have it. But yeah, it ends with Marco, with Larry realizing that Marco is the one that sold the gun to Willis because he says that, and then they go chasing him. They run off after him. And so, the ne'er-do-wells get to settle it amongst themselves.
Yeah, exactly. This sort of has a clear antagonist who is Marco. And so in a sense, I mean, look, obviously it's hitting the safety theme, but in this case, it's like, yeah, this is an example. If you think the solution that because somebody's after you is to get a gun, then what could happen is you'll just be all freaked out and paranoid. Someone in your family will come home and you'll shoot them because you think they're a burglar.
Well, and that is the kernel of truth. That's the real life story that has happened over and over and over again. That you are, some crazy high percentage more likely to shoot someone in your family or in your own home that if you have a weapon in your home than you are to actually protect yourself against an intruder.
Yeah, and I guess you're exactly right. I mean, I'm saying it snarkily because these scenes are ridiculous. But yes, this is the sitcom shorthand version of a phenomenon that is all too real. Right. All right, let's continue with Head of the Class.
Season 5, episodes 8 and 9, Dead Men Don't Wear Pocket Protectors.
Yeah, so we've covered Head of the Class many times. It is one of my all-time favorite sitcoms. I love it every time we get to watch it. This is our first time covering the Billy years, right? Head of the Class, of course, for at least 4 seasons, maybe 1 or 2 more, was a show about Mr. Moore, played by the legendary Howard Hessman, your standard, wise, mulleted, out-of-work actor that was also an erudite history teacher, and he would help you with life's problems. And the revolving cast of young, gifted students that was in his history class, I think because of salary disputes, basically, and just general sort of disgruntledness. I think that Hessman and the network did not settle on a situation, on a mutually amicable situation. And so somewhere around season 5 or so, they switched to basically one more year, I think, of the show with Scottish stand-up comedian Billy Connolly as their Jean-Luc Picard to Mr. Moore's Captain Kirk.
Yeah, I remember this changeover, and the whole open got a revamp.
Horrible.
It looks
Truly,
so 1990s.
This is the nadir. If we long ago did our favorite TV theme songs countdown, this if we did our worst of. This would be it for me, because Head of the Class, as I mentioned in that episode, was always one of my favorites. Their cheesy 80s instrumental as Mr. Moore made his way through the city. So you got to see, it was always that thing in the sitcoms where the theme sequence would be shot with much more like high production values and better film stock and everything.
Out in the world.
Yeah. And so you would see him on his way to work every morning and all the obstacles that would make him late, and he would turn to check out the pretty lady, but then he'd get splashed on by the taxi cab.
You thought it was just Sex in the City that did that.
And that was the thing. And like all shows, they would kind of, as the show went on, they shortened it a little bit. Now this thing is like freaking screensaver, like Windows 1993, just garbage. Right?
Yeah, even earlier, because it's 1990. But yeah, it is a piece of, notebook paper.
Loose leaf paper,
with all sorts of numbers.
Little E equals
and,
MC squared
equations
crap.
And little,
music
things.
Notes and whatnot.
Kind of scrolling up over it, but you're exactly right. It looks like a early Windows screensaver.
Yeah, and it's just like a cheesy synthy version of the original song.
Yeah.
Just very quick and truncated. It's just like, come on, like it's one thing if you want to just keep doing what they were doing and just sort of do away with the theme song, show the title with the thing in front of the school or like a group picture of them. That's fine. Why did they have to do that? Anyway.
Who knows? What was that? Something toaster? What was that called?
Oh, video toaster.
That's
sure.
what it looks like.
Yeah, totally. But so, we're in the Billy Connolly years. And so this means that as soon as he shows up, he's going to have, this, just like so many of these shows now, it's going to be reworked to be a little bit of a vessel for his stand-up comedy.
Right.
And so the theme this week is being from Europe and now living in New York City, it's too dangerous. He got mugged. And
Yes.
so that's, he does a tight 5 or so about all the guns and the violence in the city.
Which tees up the assignment to the class. The class, by the way, we do have some new people from the last time that we visited head of the class. In fact, we have none other than Jonathan Ki Hui, who we know better as Ki Hui Kwan.
Yeah,
right?
he's Short Round from Indiana Jones.
Exactly.
And he won an
Academy
Oscar
Award winner. He is credited as Jonathan Ki Hui, though, in this.
That's interesting.
So he's tried to Americanize his name in this credit.
I feel like he was in maybe at least one of the other episodes. They change the students a little bit every year, but at this point, the newer students like him
and
Vicky,
Aristotle,
Alex. I feel like they've been around.
Pryor. What's her first name?
Oh yeah, Rain Pryor
Rain
plays
Pryor.
TJ.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like they've been around when we've talked about the musical episodes or whichever one.
I just don't remember Ki Hui Kwan in it, and that's why I was like, oh, maybe I was like, that's cool. I forgot he was in this. I think we've talked about it on the podcast before, but I did forget, and it was cool to see him.
Yeah, totally. He doesn't get much to do in the series in general.
Yeah.
It's always the Asian character that gets the short end of the stick in head of the class. But in any case, yes, this is going to be as was the case in most of this series run. It's an Arvid episode. Yes. Arvid became pretty much the main. This was supposed to be one of these shows where the teacher is on his own level, and then all the students get to sort of rotate who dominates the story that week. Arvid and Eric became the favorites pretty much right away, with Arvid really being the one who got the most storylines. Our first sitcom study podcast ever was about Arvid losing his virginity.
Yeah. So usually you have, though, when it's an Arvid episode, you have him and Dennis kind of as like a unit. And
sometimes
this is very different.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially in the later ones, they just started getting more ideas that were for him. You got to remember, you got Arvid on Monday nights, Urkel on Wednesdays or whatever. Like, it just, this thing of the nerd was like just gaining momentum, baby. Revenge of the Nerds, like they were everywhere. Screech, you got Screech on Saturday mornings. And so, yeah, there were just so many storylines that were like, let's put Arvid in X situation.
Right.
And also, he, unlike those other ones, he's a fun actor. Like, he's not Laurence Olivier, but he's not doing some weird, annoying voice.
No.
He's just good at being like kind of clumsy and very low status and unsure of himself. And then he'll get a little taste of swagger at some point in the episode. We'll see that in this one. And, so I could understand why Dan Fishman, I think the actor's name is, like, he earned it to an extent,
Sure, but we are in season 5, and it is a stretch to think of many of these students as high schoolers anymore.
They're way too
Arvid
old.
is one of them. He looks again like a 30-year-old man.
Many of them started too old, and the situation did not improve as time went on.
Yeah.
So he's got a ne'er-do-well too. He's got a little red-haired psycho named Zach. This guy I did not particularly recognize as someone making the rounds.
And if you look at his IMDb now, he had a bunch of things where he was like a little punk kid in a bunch of stuff in the 90s and early 2000s. And then that's kind of, just the 90s basically. And then that's kind of it. But I love a redhead, so I was enjoying his little parts. But yeah, I think his character, so this is the thing. You can't make your like main character the one, the bad guy in these episodes, even if they're struggling with decisions around getting a gun and whatever. You always have to have in any of these episodes, there's always this like other person who just shows up for the purposes of the storyline so that they can be the bad guy, or we can kill them off, or whatever it is. And I always, I think as unfortunate as the 90210 episode was for that actor who that's the end of his job, that actually had more of an impact because it was a character you had gotten to know over time and you weren't expecting that person to just die.
No, totally. And yes, I hadn't even considered that. But yeah, I mean, Head of the Class is very guilty of that. They've got lots of stuff happens to their characters, but they would never be like, Eric gets mixed up with, the T-Birds.
But this is what I'm saying, though. With a cast of thousands like this class is, this would be, this would be, if any of these shows could do it, this would be the one to have, like a character killed off or whatever. So anyway, so Arvid is being threatened by this, this redheaded stepchild who is a very angry little man.
Yes.
And he is taking every day
he's literally taking
$1, right?
Yeah.
And then he's like, you know what? I didn't see you yesterday. Now I want $2.
Yeah. Which granted, I guess this was still a thing. In high school, you would go, in the 80s, you would go to school with a few bucks in your pocket because school lunch would cost $1.50.
Even in the late 90s, I took money to high school.
I guess a part of it is, like you said, it's the age of the actors that it just seems like there's just a disconnect between these people threatening each other for $1.
Right. No, that's true.
Give me your actual money in your wallet, not just your money for the one school
for
lunch
milk.
thing.
Your milk money, literally.
Yeah. But he's terrorizing him each and every day for the $1, which granted just suggests he's just terrorizing him because he likes to mess with him.
Right. And so Arvid, on multiple occasions tries to walk home with Dennis or hook up with another, couple of the classmates to, do a study group or do this or do that to try to get away from somehow being alone where this guy can kind of jump him. Nobody's really taking Arvid's kind of fear seriously. And so then they get this assignment about why the Second Amendment exists and what is gun
about guns,
basically why guns in the U.S. ? It's is their assignment 10 pages.
Get as mad about this as I am,
right?
And come to realize how bad it is that we have guns everywhere. And there is a whole debate, as is often the case in Head of the Class. We get a little sort of round robin where every character gets to say one sentence about guns. And it's just a sort of continuing stream of consciousness. This all starts because, Billy is ranting. He says, I go home, I want to turn on the TV, and what do I see? And his examples of violence on TV are Wile E. Coyote pointing the gun at Roadrunner, which I don't think that ever really happened. The whole point is he had zany, weird ways of trying to kill him, not just pointing a gun at him.
Sure, it was more Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny that was the gun.
Doesn't even mention them.
Or Daffy Duck.
And Murder, She Wrote. He talks about, he's like, and Angela Lansbury pointing a gun at some passerby or something. They couldn't be stopped to think of real examples of shows that people actually did shoot people with guns.
I think they were trying to think of ones that you wouldn't anticipate, right? You don't anticipate a child's cartoon to have guns in it, although I don't know why. Watch any child's cartoon. And you wouldn't anticipate Murder, She Wrote, being about a novelist and starring, Angela Lansbury to have, a ton of gun scenes.
Except that the name is Murder, She Wrote, so maybe you would. But they go around. It starts out with Simone and Sarah going guns are so dangerous. 1 out of every 5 people is killed by them or whatever, and go citing off the statistics. And then it'll come to somebody that's but the world is so dangerous. Shouldn't we have guns too in case we need to fight somebody with the gun? Yeah. And so, a few people agree with that. And then it ends with Alex.
You always get out their version of Alex P. Keaton.
Yes, who is also, Alan, is their version. He's the young Republican kid. And he goes let's not forget the Second Amendment Amendment, which guarantees, the right to bear arms. It's like, okay, everybody's had their say. And then, yes, Billy assigns the paper. And so, later on when Arvid is glomming on to Vicky and, who else? Vicky and Alan?
Yes, because they go to the gun store and Alan's like, don't embarrass me in this gun store.
Yeah, their way of approaching the assignment is we're going to go to a gun store and just get some information.
Yeah, we want to talk to the guy who owns the store. We want to talk to the people who are there buying. We want to understand more about why guns in America, question mark. And so, Alan's very much like, don't embarrass me and act like noobs in front of these people. And, but then the gun store owner is very educated.
He is bizarre. I love this guy.
I did too. He was I got to learn this whole history of guns in New York City in the 80s, because that's basically that's the sort of moderate line he's touting. He's explaining the process for getting the permit and what you have to basically just explaining the rules from the early 90s, late 80s in New York City. Those rules have all changed now. There are no gun stores in New York City anymore.
Yeah, no, that is one thing that has improved since the time.
Well, I don't know about improved, but
I would say it has. I think that New York City itself, legally speaking, is like these European cities that are just kind of they're just not allowed, period. Like if you're not, there's no
open carry permits or conceal carry allowed unless you're,
just not part of public life at all. And these, I think those are the laws that are starting to take shape around the time that these shows are taking place in. Yeah, this gun owner, clerk, whatever, he just he reminds me of the guy in Silicon Valley that ran their server farm, who would just kind of stare straight ahead and was just sort of surgically devoid of personality. He's just kind of spouting these statistics and wouldn't really get angry at them, but had this vaguely surly way about him. He's hard to describe, but very enjoyable. I like this guy.
I did too. He was, like I said, he was very knowledgeable. He served his whole purpose as a character, which was to get some exposition out there about real laws and what actual municipalities try to do to kind of regulate gun safety and live in a society where the Second Amendment is a reality, but also want to have some limits around that, right? That's where he is coming from. And so but then you get Arvid, who isn't really listening to that conversation. He's been taken in by another ne'er-do-well, who is another character actor that you've seen in one episode of everything. His name's Gregory Scott Cummins, and he plays Mac's dad in Always Sunny. That is a more recent thing that you've seen him in.
Okay, yeah, he didn't look super familiar to me, but he's your typical guy in the long trench coat
with
long
crazy
hair.
eyes. Yeah,
I put evil Dave Grohl is kind of the vibe I get from him. Very shifty character, and so he starts talking to Arvid and appealing to his sense of hey man, you need a
those bullies picking on you at school. You look like the type of guy people pick on.
Yeah. He says that he has something for Arvid. Arvid asks him, what kind of a rod is this? When he says he can get Arvid a gun for $20. He says this is a Saturday night special.
That is the name of apparently a type of gun that is illegal. So I was wondering if you knew what that was. It made me immediately think maybe the serial number was sawed off of it or something. How was it modified that it would be this illegal gun? Do you know?
No, I was thinking maybe you would know. Because as soon as he says that, Arvid reacts immediately and goes, oh, I know enough to know that those are against the law.
Yeah. So quick Google search tells me that they were cheaply made guns that were lighter and made with more like cheap materials, and they were smaller, so they were more easily concealable. And I guess that's why they were outlawed.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. That's what this guy has. And so, again, continuing the theme of these shifty guys that just sell guns out of their trench coat, they'll basically take your pocket change. And so, yeah, for $20, he sells Arvid this gun. We didn't mention this is ostensibly a Halloween episode, this two-parter we're talking about. Everybody's going to essentially spend the night at the school because they're like, you know, there's been all this talk amongst the adults of like, everything's so crazy out there, everything's so dangerous these days, crime is so bad, etc. We're having like a Halloween, you know, ball or whatever. So
yeah,
that
they're
the
not
kids...
spending the night. They're doing like a Halloween carnival so the kids can all, I mean, which is, again, weird for high schoolers. But instead of trick-or-treating in the city, they're going to be trick-or-treating in their gym and like around the
There's
school.
lip service paid to just like, let's keep them in the school as much as possible so that they're not hanging out on the street. What does that have to do with anything? Not Arvid is dressed as Batman.
Right. Absolutely nothing. It's just, this is a 2-part episode. So it's just another reason for them to be at the school because we need lots of opportunities for Arvid to be accosted in the hallway or various other places by this Zach kid.
Yes. He comes and accosts Arvid, who is dressed as Batman. Zach, he's, you know, if you've just watched that Andrew Dice Clay performance, Zach is not on that level.
He's definitely not very
intimidating. The one thing that he does, for better or worse, that really gets under my skin is chewing gum. That is a trait. If you want a character to just really like grind my gears the moment they walk on screen, have them chew gum. So he does that. He's harassing Arvid.
At this point, Arvid has bought the gun. He bought the gun because the guy that you referred to as
David Grohl.
Evil Dave
Grohl.
He convinced him by saying, well, if anything's going to get you an A, this is going to get you an A because think about it as your visual aid.
Arvid, he's sort of playing it both ways because the guy is trying to zero in on the idea of like, you might need this, you're probably bullied at school, but then Arvid, he warms up to the idea of like, this is the perfect visual aid.
And he even says that, he's like, where do you see my visual aid? But then he fumbles and it falls out of his backpack while Zach is accosting him, and Zach's like, oh my god, whoa, are you gonna use that? And like runs away scared. Arvid's like, I'm badass.
Zach, he turns his whole deal around, his whole attitude, and like, Arvid takes the gun immediately and is like, don't mind that, whatever, it's not real. And Zach is like, no, you don't need to explain anything to me. It's like he immediately has this newfound respect, quote unquote, for Arvid, where he's like, you don't need to explain yourself. I am sorry I harassed you. Good day to you, sir.
I don't know if it's newfound respect, because then his immediate, the very next move is he breaks into Arvid's locker and steals it.
Yes, of course. But we get this brief scene of Arvid going from like, we see him over the course of a moment going from like, whatever, just get out of here, to being like, well, maybe you should be scared of me, now why don't you scram? And so, we get, like I said at the beginning, that moment of Dan Fishman kind of haughtily chuckling to himself and kind of taking himself in. And then, we pretty much get the immediate plot twist of next time Arvid goes to his locker, the gun is missing.
And so he's panicking, and but he knows the only person that knows it's there is this Zach character. So does he tell Billy before or after?
The next thing that happens is Zach threatening Arvid, saying, if you tell anybody...
That's what it is. That's the beat I was forgetting.
He says, I'm going to give it to you, Arnold, right? Because Arvid said, you got to give it to me. He says, I'm going to give it to you. Again, full psycho.
Yes.
Like, this guy is just, total, like, screw loose.
And he gestures to, like, shooting him in the head, and then Arvid goes into class and is freaking out.
Yes.
And tells the whole class.
He tells everybody by way of his contribution to the latest, debate symposium scene where they're all going around the classroom again, sharing their little tidbits and whatnot, their little factoids. And then Arvid says, I know all too much about guns. And of course, everyone's like, Arvid, shut up. You're a big nerd. What could you possibly know about guns? Which again, what a quaint point of view that, somebody who's a nerd maybe spends too much time with computers, that they wouldn't know a lot about guns.
Right. Whereas nowadays it's like, dude, the nerds are going to come and shoot up the school.
Yeah. But so Arvid goes like, well, I'll tell you something. I know so much that I bought one.
Yes.
He proceeds to confess this to the whole school, or to the whole class rather. And they're like, what happened? And he goes, well, if you must know, it was stolen. And they're like, by whom? He's like, well, I probably shouldn't say, but Zach Baker.
My bully. And so then, they're like, oh my God, you got to tell the police. And then somebody else in the class is like, you can't tell the police, Arvid. That's a felony. You buying that gun is a felony.
Because
You'll go
it was
to
a
jail.
38 special or Saturday night special.
And also because he's underage.
Yes, that's true.
So they're like, you're going to go to jail if you try to get the cops involved.
Yeah. Now, there's a point where Arvid says, just sort of nicely summing up the thesis of this show, he goes, I guess that's the thing about guns. They make weak people feel strong.
There you go.
It gives us a little bit to think about. We get this running joke throughout the entire episode that Dennis thinks everybody has been trying to play a Halloween prank on him, because they sort of have. But so Dennis is always trying to one-up everybody.
They're like, I know what the prank is. Right. This is the prank. It's not real.
That's going to come into play now when Dennis thinks that this whole story that Arvid's been saying about Zach Butler having a gun that he stole from Arvid, he thinks that is fake. So when Arvid comes to him in the next scene and says, Dennis, I need to borrow money to give to Zach because he's threatening me and he has a gun.
Yes.
Dennis is like, Arvid, don't make me laugh. And he goes over and he goes, oh, what? Bart Simpson's gonna shoot me in the head? What is gonna happen?
I'm so scared, Yeah. And so that was funny that he was calling him Bart Simpson. That made me giggle because his hair was really crunchy and kind of like square on top of his head. So that made me giggle. But so, then now Zach knows that Arvid has told someone that he has the gun. Yeah. And so he's like, that's it. You're going to get yours right now. And he takes him outside to this like side lot at the school.
Yeah, this side lot I put was like the West Side Story gang's home turf, just like this big open, sort of like vaguely urban area.
Yeah,
that's
it looks
just
like half of a basketball court.
Yeah, but that's completely deserted in the middle of the day. Zach loads the gun to demonstrate his seriousness. He loads it in front
Arvid's
of
like,
Arvid.
oh, I didn't even buy bullets, it's not. And he's like, oh, but I did.
Yeah, and we proceed to get like, I don't know what, like 3 or 4 different waves of escalating tension, then completely diffused, then somebody else runs in like a maniac and escalates it again, right? Because Arvid and Zach, despite Zach pointing the gun at him, threatening to shoot him point blank, they sort of like come to terms, right? Like Arvid actually kind of talks him down. It's like, you don't have to do this. There's always another way. Like, I thought that I needed a gun. Like, how stupid was that? And you almost get this point of them both being like, we're both just kids in this crazy city. Like, maybe it doesn't need to come to this.
It's gone too far.
Yeah, and then Billy just comes running into this little basketball court, whatever, going like, whoa, 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 don't shoot, and just immediately freaks him out.
Right, and so Billy, meanwhile, has gone to the office to get them to call the cops because he's not letting, a gun in the school is not going to go by the wayside. He convinces the principal that this guy really has a gun, and the principal's like, he's just a punk. He would never actually do something that violent. And Billy's like, are you willing to take that chance? And then we see that scene, and then Billy arrives, just like you said, and the tensions go up again, and he starts to, he's like, look, man, this isn't what you want to do, and just keeps walking closer and closer to the gun. It's in his face, and he's like, what are you going to do? You're going to shoot me? You're going to go to jail for the rest of your life? This isn't what you want to do. He's no
doing
big deal.
He's doing a sitcom leading man whole spiel where, he's going to be a little bit funny, but he's also going to be a little bit touching and wise. And it is, for a second time in this 5-minute period, Zach gets talked down and is like, okay, I'm with you. Once again, I will not shoot you. I will surrender the gun. And then the police run in.
That's right.
Whoa, don't shoot anybody.
As he's dropping the gun and putting it down, the police come in and take it from him and haul him off to jail. And then again, we get
he pulls the trigger. Zach pulls the trigger, and it's just another one of these, for the grace of God, he just misses them.
No, it jams. The gun clicks.
Oh, right. And that's how we discover that that's part of why it was so cheap, was because it was just broken or crappy.
Doesn't really work very well. So he's being charged with attempted murder because he fired the gun while Billy was standing right in front of him, and it didn't, it misfired. And so then Billy and Arvid have a little heart to heart, and Arvid's like, yeah, dude, I saw him load it. And Billy was like, yeah, I knew it wasn't loaded. And he's like, no, it was. It didn't just click because it wasn't loaded. It clicked because it was broken. And Billy faints.
Yeah, another double beat, because we get Dennis discovering retroactively, oh my God, that was a real gun the whole time, and he was a really bad guy. And then he goes, I'm brave. And then they do the same exact beat of Billy realizing I only did that because I assumed it wasn't loaded. So yes, this is a double episode. I would argue, despite the gravity of the subject matter, this really didn't need to be 2 episodes.
It didn't need to be 2 episodes at all. And this sort of just supports Howard Hessman's point for leaving the show.
Yeah.
Because as you correctly stated, one of the sticking points was that they were not tackling deep enough storylines on a regular basis. Happy to be on a comedy that has some fun every now and then, but then also, a Family Ties really has some heart to it and has something to say about certain serious issues. This would be a prime candidate. Didn't happen because there's nothing to, they don't really have anything to say here.
Yeah.
And the only, we found the kernel in Diff'rent Strokes, where it was the fact that you're much more likely to, injure or kill a family member or someone in your home if you have a gun in the home. The only kernel here is that if you have a gun, somebody might steal it, people are gonna know about it if you take it. What is the nugget of truth here that connects this to anything? Still a question mark.
Yeah. Back in the classroom, we get to see Alan, who got one of the last words on our little sort of homeroom debate about guns.
Oh, yeah.
He says his
little flip-flop on
I
on
took a closer look at that old Second Amendment there, and turns out it says something about a well-regulated militia and bearing arms with that. So it almost seems like maybe the Founding Fathers just wanted us to sort of have the ability to organize and defend ourselves in a facility apart from the government.
No, he was saying it was allowing us to have basically the National Guard.
The National Guard, yes.
Yeah.
And it's weird how it's like, on the one hand, that comes by far closer than any of these other shows to taking on the politics behind this. And yet it still seems so quaint and apolitical.
Well, and they even had Billy, the teacher, come back with, oh, did you just throw that in there to get extra credit or to get an A with me because you know my opinions?
Yeah, it's almost just like, I don't know, I can't explain it. It just didn't have the heavy connotations that it did now. Like, I feel like the writers of this show were not worried about ruffling any feathers when they're just like, oh, and then we'll have Alan see the militia thing and he'll pick up on this, you know, like sort of popular talking point and we'll go from there. And so in conclusion, none of them are in favor of guns anymore.
Right. Well, like we said, Billy did call that out and being like, I don't really think that's your true opinion.
Yeah.
I think you're probably just putting that in there to try to win brownie points with me. Yeah. I mean, what can I say about this? I am disappointed across the entire lineup of shows about them, just not taking it seriously in the way that I guess maybe it's just my like 2026 brain being like, no, we should have real conversations about these things now. And these were exactly like you said. These episodes were all like dealing with guns as the same way they would deal with matches.
Yeah, exactly. They take it as a safety issue. And yeah, it is one of those things that it's just a bummer to contemplate because it's like it already was a very serious problem. That's why the TV shows are talking about it in the first place. And now the conversation just has metastasized in a way where it's like you almost just kind of can't put this in a sitcom at all anymore. Like
I don't want my kids hearing about guns from any side.
Like you would enrage half of the viewership on a political level, and the tragedies associated with it are just even more horrific than they already were. And so, yeah, it's interesting to see Head of the Class just sort of like kind of blithely like tap dance its way into this debate and just be like, hi, some people like guns because of the Second Amendment, but it turns out it's about militias. Anyway, moving on.
Right. And because they're a New York City school, they never talk about the argument that I always heard growing up in the South and having lots of relatives who were into hunting, which is, this is my source of food. It is absolutely not their source of food, but they want the option for it to be in case of the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, we're talking in circles. Let's move on to Blossom.
Season 4, Episode 9, 38 Special.
Yeah, I gotta say, Blossom, we've covered it a handful of times now. I feel like I always sort of frame it as like, oh, it was trying to continue that sort of like down-to-earth thinking person's sitcom, like carrying the torch from All in the Family and Family Ties, where it's like, All in the Family, we had a conservative dad and liberal kids, and then Family Ties, we had hippie parents and this sort of like buttoned up young Republican kid, and now Blossom in the 90s is like, okay, so what if it's like a hippie dad and a hippie kid, but they're both just kind of watered down and like
the brother's a drug addict or a alcoholic, the oldest brother Tony, and then you've got the himbo in Joey.
That there are some serious ideas floating around the periphery of this show, but I'm gonna say like I think Blossom might be bad. Like so I'm not going to disagree with you, and it makes me sad because I was obsessed with this show. Yeah, I liked it too. And now when we look at it, like there's always a sort of goofy celebrity cameo, usually in a dream sequence that makes no sense.
Those are the ones that we have picked, though. Not every episode was like that.
Well, see, that's what remains to be borne out. Like, look, this is season 4. So maybe we could say, oh, well, it was better in the beginning. But I kind of feel like at this point we've covered it like sort of a handful of times from different points in the show. And it's always like, I feel like it's it's not that funny. It's not that, like, it doesn't seem to have that much to say about the various subjects it tackles. And what we're going to get in this episode is, I think, a pretty clear pulling up the caboose for this lineup. This is the pretty clear low point to me for the way all these shows try to deal with this gun safety thing, because it's going to have not one but two stories in which this totally random character just literally walks onto the set and has a sort of serious life thing happen to them.
Right.
And,
or like around the main characters.
Yeah. And
right?
the characters in the show are literally, their actions are to witness it, briefly talk about it, and move on with their lives. Like, it's just so completely unwilling to involve them in any serious way.
Yeah. So, okay. So, and we do have a celebrity cameo, although it may not be a celebrity that you recognized. The clown.
Okay, so let's talk about the clown story first.
The aforementioned alcoholic clown. So the B storyline in this, or sort of parallel A storyline, is Joey is home alone, and there's the doorbell rings, and he goes to answer it, and it is a drunk clown that he recognizes from his like 8th birthday party, and they go on this adventure together to try to get this clown to his next gig, and then they like have to stop because he's got to pee, and Joey gets out and because he like yells while he's on the side of the road peeing, so Joey thinks he's fallen down the cliff or has jumped off the cliff, and so he gets out of the car, and the clown's walking on the railing, like the railing, thank you, the guardrail, and he's like walking on it, and he's like, come on, walk with me, Joe, and Joey does, and then he gets down and he's looking up at the clown, and he's like, do you need some help? Yeah. And he asks him in this very like serious way 3 times. And on the 3rd time, the guy finally says, I think I do.
Yes. Frosty the Clown, the character you're talking about.
So did you get any sort of like tinglings in your mind about how familiar this character looked? He does have full clown makeup on.
This is
so,
an
like, that's
older guy.
it.
He's meant to be like this old washed up clown. Like you mentioned, Joey remembered him from a clown party when he was a kid. No, what washed up sitcom actor is this?
That is Dick Martin, the host of Laugh-In, of Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In.
Okay, I mean, that is a significant person, but I would not recognize him. I didn't watch.
Well, so I couldn't name him off the bat. It wasn't like when we were watching that old MTV video the other night, and it was Kennedy was wearing the sweater that Mark in Rent wears, and I'm staring at this woman, and I'm like, God, I know that sweater. What? Like, who wore that sweater? And then like midway through the next break, I was like, it's Mark from Rent.
Yeah, but this this storyline is terrible.
Yes.
Like, this is bad sitcom writing. This is, when you say, oh yeah, he shows up by knocking on the door, this is what people clown on in Spider-Man 3, that the way they introduce Venom is they're just in some other scene with Peter and Mary Jane, and the globule from outer space just comes down and lands on his bicycle, and there's no reason why it was there, like why one thing would have to do with the other, why these characters were in that proximity. And it's the same thing. This is a show in which 2 of the characters are recovered alcoholics. Maybe I'm making that up about the dad, but at least the brother clearly established themes of alcoholism. They decide that they want to have an alcoholism storyline, clearly because they didn't have, this is the opposite of Head of the Class. They didn't think that their gun story, they couldn't come up with enough material for that to stretch it out.
Or the censors killed it.
Exactly. I was just going to say it had been like focus grouped and producers noted to death, where they're like, nope, this has to be a peripheral character. That can't happen. You can't show that. We can't see that. Yeah. So they throw in this extra story, which is so completely random. This guy literally rings the bell and is just like, hi, I'm a clown. Waka waka. Where's the birthday party?
Tell me how to get to this address.
I'm lost. Where's this? And then, it ends up being like the finale of Good Will Hunting, where Robin Williams keeps going like, it's not your fault, and like finally breaks him down. He asks him, Joey asks him if he's a little drunk. He says, no, this morning I was a little drunk. And then
now I'm a lot drunk.
He has to keep saying, do you want some help? And finally he breaks down, and like, it's
and
just
then they
nonsense.
go to the house, they go back to the house, and Blossom and Tony, the older brother, who is, a recovering alcoholic, just happen to be having a conversation about how he has a meeting tonight. Like, oh, are you going to your meeting tonight? Yep, I'm going to the meeting tonight. Oh, hey, I'm dealing with this thing at school. We touch on the other story, like the main storyline. And then in walks Joe with a clown, and he's like, hey, Tony, do you have a meeting tonight? Good, you're taking this clown with you. And Tony's like, and Joey's like, you're doing it. And that's the end of that storyline.
This is like a freelance writer just had this ready to go for whatever TV show, would
needed
pay
an
up.
extra little bit.
Yeah, just like, here, I've got this, because both storylines are like this. I got a troubled teenager who's got a gun and a drunk clown. It's about 22 minutes, it'll get you over the line.
It'll be a very, very special episode.
Yeah, because the gun part of this story is basically just as ridiculous. It doesn't involve a clown, but it involves somebody with the hair of a clown, Brian Krakow from My So-Called Life.
It's the guy from My So-Called Life.
Yes, the soft-spoken neighbor who, had the big blonde fro.
Yeah.
And, he's a couple years younger, but still has that exact same look. He's got the flannel shirt. The episode opens and he just literally walks in from off-camera left, opens his locker.
Which is next to Blossom's.
Yep. And we see, he's got a gun. And, that's...
And Blossom's like, whoa, hey. And he's like, you didn't see this, okay? You didn't see it.
Yeah, he says, I just bought it to scare somebody, okay? Who does he want to scare and why? Never discussed, never
mentioned.
Revealed.
Yeah.
So Blossom's dilemma in this is not, do I get a gun? It's not like, what do I do about the fact that my friend's got a gun? It's just, what do I do about the fact that I saw a gun?
Right. And so she isn't supposed to tell anybody, but then of course she tells Six, and Six is like, well, you can just keep quiet. They have a whole little conversation about basically being a narc, and like nobody wants to, everybody in their school is keeping quiet about all these things because nobody wants to be a narc and nobody wants to be the tattletale. And so basically your options are just be silent and keep your head down and get out of this, school with your shirt on, or, say something about it, but then you have to be ready to deal with the consequences.
Yeah. And now, again, for better or worse, this is at a time when school shootings were not a thing.
Yeah.
And so she is just sort of pulling a Willis, like being like, well, I need to insert myself into this situation.
No, I think it scared her. And we come to find out that the school has an anonymous hotline. So if you see something, you can say something, but you can do so anonymously. Yeah. So she has, and it is like this show is a series of bad scenes, but the number one bad scene in this show is her sitting at her desk in her bedroom,
practicing,
talking to herself about whether or not she should call. So what should I say when I call? Yeah. Let me try this voice.
Yes. She's trying different voices.
I'll try this voice. I mean, it is ridiculous.
This was my favorite part of the fake IDs episode, is part of getting into a club, that you're too young for, is you have to have a whole persona with like, hey man, let's talk about taxes. And so in this case, it's like, if I'm going to anonymously report gun possession, I need to, have a whole identity, and let me try a high voice.
And it's this weird monologue that is just so poorly written. The whole thing is awkward. So because this episode was kind of, I looked up who the director was.
Okay.
It's the dad.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know how much of a director's medium Blossom is.
I don't know that the director could have necessarily made it better in this instance, but yeah. So this horrible scene, eventually she does decide to report it.
Well, the worst scene that I thought you were going to say is when she consults her boyfriend, Ted from Hey Dude.
Yes.
And he totally negs her on going stool pigeon. He's like, oh no, I think you should do that. I think it is the right thing to do. You know, if you want to be a low down weasel.
Right. He totally gives her a hard
time. He's like, oh, you'll be like Fredo in The Godfather. You know, like the most weaselly character that's ever lived.
So the only kind of thing that I can pull out of this, maybe, is that they are trying to make a comment on the peer pressure to say nothing. That is like, you know, because I'm like, what is the reason? You know, the episode, like you said, it just sort of ends. Yeah. She does report the kid. The next day she shows up at school while the principal is searching the guy's locker. Nothing is in there. And he turns around, sees Blossom standing there, knows she's the only one who knew, and is like, cases, you're going to get yours.
Yeah, Arvid rather, and Blossom both make the mistake of like making it very clear to whoever is menacing them that they have revealed this to other people. Right. You know, like they just don't seem to consider, as they're doing all their pacing and waffling and decision making, like, once I take action, it's going to be obvious that I have, you know, revealed this, or they don't take any steps to like make that not the case.
Yeah. And so, I mean, what can you do though? If you're the only person that knows and you know it's a dangerous situation.
Yeah,
you have
I guess
to.
So. Yeah, I mean, in Arvid's case especially, he just like walked 2 feet over the desk. I was like, that guy's got to go.
Right.
But yeah, the locker is searched, and yeah, it seems like Blossom didn't consider like, oh, the gun might not be there anymore. Right. But this kid will be really mad. And so he menaces her just like Zach Baker from Head of the Class.
Yeah.
He goes, you'll get yours, kid, I promise.
Right.
But if you want to talk about like a decay over the generations, from Andrew Dice Clay, this larger than life like arch villain who just, you know, eats up the screen. We go from him to the like pimply redhead kid who's like, yeah, all kind of like greasy and annoying, but at least he has some menace.
He's got
to him.
Crazy eyes.
Yeah. And now we've just got this like schlub, just this nothing of a kid.
Well, but so this, again, this is different. And this actually was kind of prophetic in a way, right? Because the whole reason this kid says that he has the gun is to scare someone. But then it turns out at the end, he was just going to kill himself. And that's what he does. He commits suicide with the gun, which we find out in the like 2 scenes later. Blossom's back at school again the following day. And, you know, everyone's like, did you hear what happened? Did you hear what happened? He killed himself. You know, what's his name? Jimmy Kelly is dead. Yeah. He killed himself, you know, with the gun that you saw. You were right. He had one. And end of episode, like credits roll. Yeah. So they aren't going to like talk about suicide. They aren't going to deal with suicide at all. There's not going to be, you know, they're not going to have any discourse on the fallout of that. It was all just about this gun, like, and what do you do when you know somebody has a gun and they might not be safe? And initially your fears were that they were going to do something, you know, to other people, but it turned out it was just them. So, it is more like a real life situation, but I get frustrated with that sometimes on television shows when they're trying to pack all this into 30 minutes or 22 minutes. Like, you can't just present a real life situation that's frustrating. You know what I mean? Like,
let's remember that not only do they devote a significant chunk of the episode to Frosty the drunken clown, right. There is another story in which Nick the dad has his old buddy. I don't know if this was like a real life musician who is guest starring on the show. But
sometimes it is, but I'm not sure.
This
in
is
case.
a whole subplot with them getting their band together and trying to book shows, multiple scenes of them on the phone calling different venues to try to get a gig, and then a full-on performance scene where they actually play a song and they devote
at least
about this.
Like
2 minutes of the show.
They play 2 songs.
It really was like they were like, okay, so we've got this story about a troubled youth who has a gun, and Blossom doesn't know whether or not she should tell anybody about it, and it ends up being a tragic suicide story. That's about, what, a quarter of our half-hour comedy? Right?
That's act 1.
We need at least 3 more stories to fill this sucker out. So yeah, it is just like insulting the little amount of effort they put into sketching out this character. So you're right. The idea that, oh, he wasn't a bully, he was maybe being bullied, or just in general was a very troubled, sad kid that didn't have anybody to turn to. Like, none of that gets fleshed out. We get that's why I was making fun of it in the first place, is because when he turns to Blossom and says, "You'll get yours," it just comes across like, okay, I guess this is just our latest gun-toting bully of all of the ones we've seen so far. And he's like the worst of all of them.
Yeah. And well, so in that moment, again, I took my like future person goggles on, lens to look at this and was thinking, oh, school shooting. But yeah, you're right, though. In the context of the time, that was not a thing that was happening all the time. So it just, it was not, that's not what they were going for. Now that we've talked about it, I can definitely see, maybe they were trying to go for this thing that is very difficult about, doing the right thing when there's peer pressure. But God, there's so many more stories that could highlight that and that you could really dig into and have a lesson learned and all of that.
This is extremely muddled. And again, it just totally reeks of like producer's notes and last minute changes. Because if this ends up being that this boy died by suicide, that is, of course, a thing that really happens. And it happened to multiple kids at my high school. And the idea of like the way you would get to that is like, well, somebody spotted a gun that he was taking into his locker. Like, that's such a bizarre, circuitous way of getting there that they almost decide like, no, never mind the gun safety aspect. What about the suicide aspect? Like, it just plays as confused and like not knowing what it's getting.
You're
at.
Exactly right. And it is kind of a bummer because I do look to shows like Blossom as being this, like you were saying, torchbearer of continuing the, what they started with things like All in the Family and Family Ties. Like, let's have a conversation about tough topics. Let's tackle these issues. And, when you're looking at the show and you're like, yeah, Diff'rent Strokes did this better.
Yeah. Rough goings here. All right. Let's bring it on home with a much more grimly focused episode, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Season 5, Episode 15, Bullets Over Bel-Air.
Yeah, so here's another one that's kind of strange. We'll say at least this one does bring everything back into the family, and this is very much about characters making decisions about their actions. And this isn't just going to be Brian Krakow wandering in, but also very bizarre in certain ways. This one is really hitting on the sort of like urban rot and moral decay thing. Something I forgot to mention about Blossom was at the end, they did have that scene where Blossom is talking to Tony, her older brother, and he goes like, yeah, it's like the Wild West these days, except whiskey's been replaced by crack and 6-shooters have been replaced by Uzis. So it's like, we don't have school shootings exactly, but we do have this thing of like, there's just too much guns, too much violence, too much lawlessness. Like, the world is dangerous now. And I feel like that's what this Fresh Prince thing is really tapping into.
Yeah. So the setup for the Fresh Prince is they are going on a camping trip. Will is not interested in roughing it, but both Carlton and Uncle Phil are very excited.
Yeah, this whole beginning is almost like a Simpsons story, like a fake out, because this camping trip never ends up happening.
It never ends up happening. And so, but it's, Carlton is in full like Eagle Scout outfit and yet isn't really roughing it. Like, they've got all of these highfalutin glamping gear that they're going to bring with them. And there's all these little sight gags of Carlton trying to load up Will's pack, and Will can't even stand up because it's so heavy. And then Uncle Phil comes in and he's like, oh, we're going to hike 40 miles, 2 days in a row or whatever. And Will's like, what? And then I don't know why they need cash to go into the wilderness, but they make the decision that they're going to go to the ATM.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a bet. It's something because it's something about like one of them owes the other one money. And so Will is like, all right, fine, let's go to the ATM.
Yes.
And then we get that sitcom thing of like, who needs sets when you can have like little spotlights shine on one, 3 square foot space amidst like a black void. Right?
Kind of the way ATMs are late at night. I mean, it wasn't too bad. But yeah, we see then, there's like a noise behind them as they're walking away. And from off camera, we just sort of see an arm come out with a gun. And the guy's like, give me that money.
It's basically the same shot as when the singing telegram girl in Clue gets killed, and you just see like the black gloved hand holding the black gun in the black darkness.
Yes.
And like you don't know what you're looking at. It's just clear like somebody is shooting someone.
Right. And so Will pushes Carlton out of the way and gets shot in the back.
Yeah, it's one of these like...
This is the first time, though, somebody's getting shot
yes.
in all of our episodes.
This is an outlier in a number of ways because this isn't like, oh, there's some situation at school and so like somebody is offering me a gun. This is, just straight up like an actual assailant comes in. And it's one of these like, what is it like? Will just wants to give him his money and Carlton is like doing something weird.
Carlton is like, I have more in my fanny pack. And the guy's like, keep your hands out of your pocket. And that's when
he's
Will
being weird and like,
tries to throw him to the ground.
Exactly. There's this melee and Will gets shot.
Yeah.
And this is where I'm hearkening back immediately to the Charles in Charge episode where I don't think anyone got shot, but one of them
absolutely did not.
One of them definitely was hospitalized. I feel like Charles and Buddy were both hospitalized.
That was when Buddy met Nurse what's her face that he dated off and on for like the rest of the series.
I just remember I can picture one of them in a hospital bed and the other one or maybe both of them getting to have like really intense monologues where they clearly were like, this is going to be the episode where like our friendship is on the line and like,
I do not remember any of this, and I don't think Charles in Charge was ever so bold.
Oh, I think they were. And this was clearly meant as an acting showcase for Will and Carlton, as opposed to like more of a PSA about gun safety, the way some of the earlier ones. I felt like the turn that this episode takes is just like really like, yes, this is going to be about the sort of psychological journey of Carlton, a man whose notions of safety and law and order have been shattered.
Totally. Yeah. So the first thing I thought when Will gets shot is, well, that's why he left Philly. Yeah. And then his mom arrives and he immediately says that to her. And I'm like, I'm glad they said the obvious, because if they didn't, the whole point of this show is that Will has to leave Philly because it's too dangerous on the streets. And then who would have thunk he gets shot in Bel-Air at the ATM. And so, but Carlton, his like survivor's guilt is the thing that he's dealing with. He can't, he's just like, Will, you saved my life. And he, that should have been me. And Dad, this like, this is not, why is this man on the street?
Yeah.
You are supposed to, you're a judge. You protect us from these types of things. How is this possible? And what does he say? Like, the entire fairy tale of the world that you've sold me is, is gone for me. I can't believe anything you say. And so I got to get out of here. And then he leaves the hospital and buys a gun.
Carlton's whole deal is, first of all, he will not abide any humor or levity surrounding this situation.
Right. And Will's just trying to joke his way
Will
out
is
of
doing the thing, of like, somebody that's on the mend and wants to diffuse the situation.
Right.
And so they're making little jokes and stuff. And Carlton cannot abide that. And Carlton's dad, being a lawyer and now a judge, is like, so you're into this whole society thing, this government thing. What am I to do about the fact that the system doesn't work? And his dad says something about, we have to trust in the system to do what it does.
And that justice can be slow.
Carlton goes, I'm all grown up, Dad. Don't tell me any more fairy tales. Yeah,
and that was it. It was very overdramatic.
This is very much, and look, this is a go-to thing that I, much to my annoyance, is still the basis for movies today. All of these dumb revenge thrillers where, the big one in the 80s was Death Wish, where Charles Bronson's wife and or family all get killed and raped and tortured and these horrible things, and that becomes the excuse for him to go on a rampage killing all the bad guys. And the true thing that those were tapping into was that, especially in the cities, there was a lot of violence in the 80s and 90s, and they didn't always catch the people that did it. And so it turned into a thing of are you just being like a schmo if you think that the police and the courts and everything are going to keep you safe? Do you need to become a Charles Bronson-esque killing machine in order to survive in this crazy world of ours?
Gotta be what do they call that? A vigilante.
Yeah. And so, Carlton, I don't think do they show him buying the gun?
No. We're basically, once we get to the hospital, we're in the hospital for the rest of the show.
Yes.
And so all the conversations are either happening in the waiting room or in Will's room. And then we find out that Will's being moved to a private room. It was the craziest, when they were in just the regular, hospital room, there was this giant cabinet filled with pill bottles in his room. He was in the medicine storage closet, and then he got moved into a private room that had a whole little sitting area where his girlfriend's named Lisa, right?
Yeah,
where she could sleep, and she and the mom were trading off sleeping in the chair to, be there with Will because he had to stay for a little while. I mean, look, it was a serious injury. The surgeon tells us that if it had been 1 inch to the right, it would have severed his spine and he wouldn't be walking anymore. So that's what, Will's trying to make jokes about an inch, I was an inch away from death and whatever. And so, he, like you're saying, is trying to lighten the mood, but Carlton's not having anything of it. He gets in this argument with his dad, then he leaves, then he comes back, and he and Will have this confrontation where Carlton is like, well, I know what I'm going to do, and it's right here. And he lifts up his little jacket, and there's
Will hugs him.
Oh, right. And it's he's like, what's that?
Yeah, it's unclear to me. I think Will was just hugging him and he finds the gun as opposed to sort of frisking him. But yeah.
No, I don't think he was frisking him.
Yeah, they have a whole exchange. Carlton says, my father and I aren't seeing eye to eye right now. Everything he's ever told me is a lie. Still that very somber, dead serious thing. And then, they hug. Will discovers the gun, and they have a whole another serious conversation. And this is why I say it's like the Charles in Charge, it's time for us to get our Emmy nomination type thing. Because like you said, this doesn't go anywhere else. There's there's just nothing to this episode. Like the whole second half of it is just the two of them talking in his room. Yeah. And it is just Will convincing Carlton to give him the gun.
Well, so the way it gets set up is that, Carlton is like, I'll do anything. You saved my life, man. What can I do for you? And Will is like, making the jokes. Forget about it. It's fine. Could have happened to anybody. You'd have done the same thing for me, kind of a thing. Like, don't sweat it, whatever. Trying to like diffuse what he knows is this guilt that Carlton is feeling. Then the hug happens. He finds the gun. And then they, like you said, the heat rises again. And Will puts two and two together and is like, you know what, man? You can do something for me. You said I saved your life. You owe me. So give me the gun.
Yeah. It's like, I want the gun. I like this. This is a performance that's happening. Like he's again going back to the Joey from Blossom like, with the repeating thing. Some help? Yeah, this time he's going like, I saved your life. I want the gun. I saved your life. I want the gun, man. I want the gun. Just like really,
you have to give it to me.
Future
you said anything.
Academy Award winner William Smith, yes, delivering this scene, and then Carlton hands him the gun, and again. No epilogue, no coda, no denouement.
He's so cranky about it. He's just like, he knows he's backed into a corner because he said he'd do anything. So then he just like tosses the gun in between Will's legs on the bed, which again, like as a person who was very scared learning gun safety in her early 20s, is like, you don't throw a loaded gun onto the bed. Yeah. What are you doing?
And then Will picks it up. He's in the room all by himself. He empties out the bullets. He cries, fade to black, silence, end of episode.
End of episode.
Like, it just, it really, like you said, it's not the kind of very special episode where it's like, if you want to learn more, consult your local library. But it has that super serious, like, this is real, man. And it's weird how, like, to me, it is a mix of, like, it's not that they give it no time and energy the way Blossom did. It's like they give certain parts of it so much time and energy. So like the drama of Carlton making this decision to become like a cold-hearted vigilante and then go back to normal is very fleshed out. But the whole circumstance of just like, hey man, you owe me $10. All right, let's go to the ATM. Wait, look, that guy has a gun. Oh my God, I'm almost dead. Like the whole setup of it was so quick and like sort of tossed off.
I mean, I'm not mad about that though, because that's normal life. Like that is random things do happen. I think the story that they were trying to tell was after the shooting. I'm not mad about that. Yeah. But I think you're right in that the writing didn't live up to what they wanted it to be in that, the rest of the episode. Will Smith says this is the episode that The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air jumped the shark. He says this is also the episode that made him realize he needed to think seriously about ending the show. And then he has a conversation with John Amos from Good Times. Okay. John Amos, the dad from Good Times, who was unceremoniously killed off because of contract disputes and whatnot over the shitty storylines. The way that those storylines were not doing justice to the characters and what the TV show said it was going to be to begin with, right? So Will Smith has a conversation with John Amos and basically walks away from that conversation and is like, you need to let this family leave this show with dignity. So he walks back in after a couple episodes in season 6. This is towards the end of season 5. And he says, you guys take this year to figure out what's your next move, because the series is ending this year. This is our last season. James
Avery, you've got your Shredder money from voicing Shredder on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Alfonso, you might want to give America's Funniest Home Videos some consideration. But
he did a lot of things before AFB.
Yeah.
It was his stint on Dancing with the Stars that actually landed him his AFB.
That is interesting. Yeah, okay, so this was not his idea. This was some dumb, like, oh, we've got to... Yeah, and the thing I'll say is, like, this should have taken the screen time from Head of the Class. This should have been a 2-part episode. Like,
they could have done it.
Give them a little bit more time to flesh out what they're doing at the ATM, even if it's just a little more scenery, like just having it be like, oh, go up against that black curtain and, we'll have, let's get that key grip to hold a gun and just zoom in really close on it. Just flesh out that scene a little bit more. And then on the back half, have Carlton go out into the world. I get that they're not going to have a whole Dirty Harry-esque like crime sequence, but have him live a little bit with this sort of rotten, paranoid, revenge-oriented mindset.
They could have had a scene, because we're already far enough into the series that they're working at that bookstore at the college.
Yeah, they need something akin to the way Willis nearly shot Mr. Drummond.
Yes.
They need Carlton to go out in the world and just have some sort of a close call where he realizes, like, oh, this could actually be more trouble than it's worth, instead of just Will is so darn persuasive that in the same scene that he discovers the gun, he literally disarms Carlton with his charm, and so the whole situation's over now.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, gosh. What a crazy lineup this was.
Yeah, really. So looking back on it, I definitely have, this is not one where I'm just wavering and I feel like, oh, they're all pretty much the same. There's, a lot of different things going on here. What are your thoughts?
So to me, Diff'rent Strokes did it right. And the reason they did it right was they had stakes. Yeah. Even though Head of the Class had a moment where the gun was pointed and all of these things, because the writing that surrounded it did not support the weight of the material, it felt hokey when it was going on. Whereas even though there was a lot of hokiness happening in Diff'rent Strokes, the weight, when the heavy things happened, the writing was good. It was all the other silly stuff with the maid and the housekeeper and all the other stuff that didn't really, that was just sort of periphery. So when it was important, they did a good job with it. So that's why I think Diff'rent Strokes wins it for me.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't want to belabor the points we've already discussed. This was really interesting time capsule wise, just to see the gun debate, manifesting itself as a safety issue and a sort of like moral decay, urban rot kind of issue, and not the political hot point that it's become. But yeah, in terms of these episodes, to me, there's a clear sort of pecking order where Blossom, like I said, is unfortunately at the bottom of the barrel. The way it feels entitled to tackle this as an issue and then shove it in there in between the drunken clown and the
dad's
revival
band.
cover band. It's just so silly that it doesn't have the courage of its convictions to have anything happen to any of its characters other than just witnessing it and briefly discussing it. And then a step up from that is the Fresh Prince, which does have, like I said, that very intense second half where you really see Carlton's journey into the world of revenge and gun ownership. Yeah. But again, it's so sort of slapdash in the way it's set up and the way it's diffused that, just like I already said, like that one would have been a more entertaining and more impactful 2-part episode where they were really like, let's have Carlton sort of break bad, if you will, for okay, at least like 10 minutes of screen time. And then up from that, you get Head of the Class, which does have the silliness of that Sean Baker bully character being like basically Dennis
Zach,
the Menace.
Not Sean, yeah.
Oh, right, Zach. But yeah, being just sort of like Dennis the Menace, with
yes, he was very much like Dennis the Menace. You're right.
Having that thinly veiled comic stand-up bit ported over into the sitcom, but at least that did use the Head of the Class format to have, it's almost like if you toss aside the aspect of the story that was Arvid gets the gun, which is obviously what they're going to sell on the commercials and everything. The fact of the head of the classroom talking about all the ups and downs and gun violence. And well, at what point do you say the need to protect yourself outweighs the more abstract concerns of safety and all the Second Amendment and the different ways you can interpret it? Like that in some ways has the more even-handed approach of like, this is an issue in our society. Let's like try to think about it from the different sides.
Yeah, but unfortunately, unlike the Howard Hessman episodes, this, like you said, was a vehicle for, Billy Connolly to do a stand-up routine, a tight five, as you said, rather than actually have the class have a series of lines. They did that. They gave a nod to it. Everybody kind of said one little thing, but it wasn't like the episodes of Head of the Class that I'm sort of nostalgic for are these ones where Howard Hessman sits on that desk and that is, half the episode is them going round and round and round, having these classroom debates.
Yeah. And he challenges them. And it is weirdly the mentoring that happens in this episode is not, it's more just of like disarming the bully at the end. It doesn't play into it the same way like a losing your virginity.
Not at all. It's, look, Billy feels safe enough to ride his bike to work again.
Yeah. And so at the top of the heap, absolutely different strokes. It's one of these sitcom episodes where you're like, wow, yeah, they really got a lot in there in that really short running time, that they have the multiple villains. They have a whole hierarchy of Andrew Dice Clay and his crazy Godspell greaser gang, and then Ponyboy and his outsider people, and then you have Marco, the opportunist, slime ball. Yeah. And then, plus the real villain is the confusion of not knowing, who's coming into your house. So the way that Mr. Drummond confronted them with that sort of like old-timey, that old-timey New York guy of like, you don't scare me, you're not so tough, all of that. Yes, top notch. It sells the whatever public service it's trying to get across. It sells them just as well as any of the others do, and without being as hokey.
Exactly, and they did it in the time frame. They didn't have to use 2 episodes. That was, I think, the downfall of Head of the Class for me was that it was spread out over 2 episodes.
Totally.
Blossom had a third of an episode and packed it with some other junk. And Head of the Class, they had 1 episode that they spread out over 2, which was kind of a bummer.
All right, so much for getting a gun. What are we talking about next week?
Jay, I have to tell you something. I am going to be joining a cult.
Oh dear. Okay. The revelations continue.
That's right. So we are going to watch episodes in which some of our characters join cults and the other ones freak out about it. We're going to watch Three's Company, Season 3, Episode 7, Chrissy and the Guru, Charles in Charge, Season 4, Episode 16, Curing the Common Cult, The Simpsons, Season 9, Episode 13, The Joy of Sect, and Parks and Recreation, Season 4, Episode 6, End of the World.
Yep, joining a cult is next week, and until then, we will consider this segment of the sitcom study concluded. Thank you for listening to the Sitcom Study. Tell us what you think or share your own TV tropes and topic ideas by sending a self-addressed stamped email to sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like the show, consider leaving a rating or review on your podcast app. It helps us boost those precious Nielsen ratings. The Sitcom Study is recorded in front of a live studio dog.